My name is Amata, and in this Red Gaming Tech video I'm here with some recommendations for the Steam Lunar Sale 2018, which is a fairly short sale, only runs for a few days. In fact, it only has a couple of days left at the time of recording, as it does end on February the 19th. But I still thought you guys might like to know what I personally would recommend to spend your Steam Wallet on, or what have you. So here are some of my recommendations for the sale. So the first recommendation I have is actually one of my favourite games of all time that recently came out on the PC. It is, of course, Okami HD. This game is pretty infamous. It was a bit of a cult classic when it came out. It didn't really do so well sales-wise. Has been released a few times now. But it is honestly, as I said, not only one of my favourite PS2 games of all time, but just generally one of my favourite games of all time, period. It has some issues, of course, but not only is it stunning to look at, it is just a joy to play. Honestly, that's the best way I can have to explain it. It's just so full of humour and, again, joy, and just, honestly, I just love running around this world and exploring it. I've played it more times than I can count, to be honest with you, but I never get tired of it. Recently did finish replaying it on the PC. Those of you wondering, okay, what sort of game is it? Well, it's basically an RPG. But as you can see, not only does it have a very unique art style, it has very unique mythology to go with it. You know, it's all sort of based in Japanese mythology, which, unless you know you're from Japan or you have a passion for that culture, you might be unaware of. But it just has really cool combat where you draw things into existence, like cherry bombs or the wind or fire, that sort of thing. So it's all about gaining new abilities, and has a very Zelda style of gameplay where you unlock new abilities and explore new dungeons and that sort of thing. So if you like your Zeldas, you're probably going to like Okami, to be honest, and it is 30% off, making it £11.19. It only came out on PC on the 12th of December, so obviously not a huge discount, but it's not expensive to begin with. I would highly recommend this game even at full price, so definitely at 30% off. If you haven't played it, definitely check it out. Staying on the RPG theme for a moment, our next game is Undertale. Now, I'm not going to waste too much time on this game, because to be honest, this is a very, very famous game at this point for obvious reasons, and it has been on sale multiple times as well. It is obviously an RPG that challenges a lot of the tropes of RPGs, and honestly just has really well written characters and a really interesting world, and is just really cool to play, you know, outside of all the sort of memes and the rather interesting fan base, shall we say. It is just a really good game, and I would highly recommend it, especially at this really cheap price, which is 50% off, making it £3.49. Oddly enough, the game plus soundtrack bundle is not reduced at all, so I wouldn't recommend buying that. However, the soundtrack itself is £6.99, so buy them separately, to be honest, because oddly enough, you would actually end up paying more if you got them in the bundle logic, but the soundtrack is really good. So Undertale, if you haven't got around to playing it, it's pretty damn cheap. I wouldn't recommend it if you don't like your bullet hells or your difficult games. However, I would recommend it if you like your story and your very well written and charming characters. However, let's move on to a AAA game after an indie entry there, and it's Tomb Raider. This is, of course, the 2013 remake by Crystal Dynamics. Doesn't really need much of an introduction either. This was a much needed kick for the Tomb Raider series, and it's also just a really, really cool game. I bought it myself on sale many years ago now for about £5 or £7, something along those lines anyway. Obviously, it was a bit of a reboot / origin story for the series, and while it did take the series in a direction that long-standing Tomb Raider fans had some issues with, it's very uncharted in its execution. It is still a really cool game, even if it's a bit heavy on the Lara has the most terrible luck in the world theme. It is still a really fun game, even if it changes the formula in a way that you might not like if you're a long-standing Tomb Raider fan. I would still recommend it as a game in its own right. It's really, really fun. I personally just love playing this game in stealth, and I don't normally like stealth mechanics. However, you can absolutely tear ass by the end of the game. And to be honest, it's kind of required by the end of the game with how much the game actually throws at you. And it's insanely cheap at the moment. You can get the base edition for 85% off, making it £2.24, or you can get the Game of the Year edition, which has all of the DLC with it as well. That's also 85% off, making it £3.74. So it's not even that much more to get the crazy amount of DLC that came out for this game. And well, a lot of it is like multiplayer stuff and an extra tomb and that sort of thing, but maybe grab it, you know, take a look at what's there, and if you like the look of what you see, then go for it. If not, the base game is definitely worth checking out. However, let's move on to a more recent game, shall we, with Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I'm also going to be lumping Human Revolution in here as well, as that is also insanely cheap. Personally, I would recommend Human Revolution over Mankind Divided. Well, if you haven't played Human Revolution, obviously you need to play it if you're going to play Mankind Divided, because it is a literally direct sequel to Human Revolution. But even that aside, personally, in my opinion, Mankind Divided is not quite as good as Human Revolution. Human Revolution was a surprisingly good reboot of the very much lauded Deus Ex, and I think Human Revolution is a much better game. Not that Mankind Divided is bad or anything, but I personally think you'd be just fine only playing Human Revolution and just leaving it at that. If you want some closure on the story, Mankind Divided is there for your perusal as well. However, it's obviously, very famous FPS, very heavily sci-fi themed, obviously, very themed on like the rights of people who have been enhanced and all that sort of thing. And they were a little bit heavy-handed with the marketing of Mankind Divided, let's just say. But all that aside, it is a very cool game, even if I think it does fall down in comparison to Human Revolution. So Human Revolution itself is £1.94 for the director's cut, and the Mankind Divided one is £4.99 for the standard edition, or you can get the Digital Deluxe Edition for £8.88, which is 73% off, and that obviously has the base game, as well as the Season Pass. However, we also have the Deus Ex Collection Bundle, which has Deus Ex Invisible War, Deus Ex The Fall, as well as Human Revolution, Mankind Divided, and the Season Pass as well, all for £9.64. So, to be honest, if you're thinking about getting the Digital Deluxe Edition for Mankind Divided, probably better off just getting the Deus Ex Collection Bundle, because it's not even that more, but you get all of those games as well. Personally, that's what I'd say. If I was going to spend that much money anyway, I'd be like, I might as well. Obviously, if you already own a couple of them, then maybe not, but I'm talking as if you don't own any of them, or if you're missing most of them. So if you're looking for a way to spend a lot of time and have a lot of fun in a cool sci-fi world, as well as, of course, continuing a cult game, shall we say, definitely would recommend both of those games for you today. However, let's continue on with Prey. This was a very cool game that came out last year, of course, is made by Arcane Studios, the guys who were behind Dishonored. Obviously, this is a very, very, very different style of game to Dishonored, although it is also featuring English, it's hard apparently, it also features stealth mechanics as well. It's definitely not stealth focused. It is, however, a ball-bustingly difficult game, I must say. Some of these enemies will wreck you. However, before I get too ahead of myself, it is an FPS, obviously, with a heavy sci-fi theme, and is definitely calling back to like Bioshock and System Shock. Like, it wears that on its sleeve pretty clearly. You're sort of modifying yourself with things that, aren't obviously plasmids, because they don't give you like powers to shoot bees out of your hands or anything like that, but you can, turn yourself into a coffee cup and hide and that sort of thing. So, powering yourself up, exploring this space station, piecing together what went on, why is it in this situation, how are you going to escape, that sort of thing. It definitely has that sort of Bioshock style of background storytelling, not only with like the sort of things left around, the posters and the remnants and things left by the people that were around. You also got, finding your audio tapes and all that sort of thing, as well as, of course, the few living characters that you encounter, giving you that little bit of story as well. So, if all that sounds good, and I do have a video on this as well, I would highly recommend Prey. It is a little bit expensive still, even though it is 50% off, it is still £14.99, which for a Steam sale is a lot of money. Obviously, all of the games that I've just mentioned before this have been under £5, apart from Okami, obviously, which is over £10, but still, this is the most expensive by far. However, I would say that it's definitely worth this price. It didn't make it to my Game of the Year list, but it still is a really, really fun game, and I enjoyed my time in this world. A really cool world to explore, which I think is definitely a must for a game that obviously demands so much of you in terms of your skill and obviously your time as well. Not that this is like a mega long game or anything. It's not a Persona 5, which is going on still for like 80 hours now. But, it is, smashing your face against an area, sneaking your way around, trying different tactics, that sort of thing. It definitely has that style of, hey, if that one way isn't working, try another way, that sort of thing. So it definitely is quite difficult. At least I found it difficult, so do keep that in mind. However, I would still recommend it very much, especially if you like your Bioshocks. So let's move on from the AAA to the indie again, with Oxygen not included. Now, before I go any further, I just want to make it clear that this game is still in early access, which obviously means it's still in active development. The game that you buy now might not necessarily be the same game as it is in a couple of months or even a couple of weeks. They are fairly regularly updating the game. There is, in fact, a new update for the game called the Occupational Upgrade. However, Oxygen Not Included is by Clay, who you probably know for Shank and Mark of the Ninja. However, this game is very different to their past works, but is also a survival game, kind of like they did before with Don't Starve. So it's not like completely out of their remit or anything. It is just very different to the sort of games that made them popular in the first place as a studio. So basically the idea behind Oxygen Not Included is you are given a group of replicants who have sort of crash landed in space and now have to kind of make their life here and try to survive, as that's pretty much going to be their home now. It's like, this is your home now, you've got to live here, so, you know, make your base. You've got a lot of things to maintain, you know, you've got to worry about oxygen, got to worry about food, obviously the sort of stuff like morale as well, cleanliness, and obviously expanding your technology trees, and obviously expanding the world and that sort of thing. So obviously there is more and more content being added, concerns of the fan base being addressed, that sort of thing. But if you like your stuff, like, for example, like RimWorld, then I would definitely recommend this. And it's not really a game, or type of game to be more exact, that I usually like. However, Clay's definitely unique art style adds a lot of charm to the game. And it is also not obnoxiously hard. I mean, yeah, you can absolutely screw things up and the game might not necessarily tell you. You just have to kind of watch as things spiral into inevitable demise. However, that is kind of the fun of these games, where you learn, you improve, you start a new colony, and then, hey, all the stuff I learned last time, I know that this is the proper order to do things, that sort of stuff. Obviously, there are some frustrations with this sort of game that come inherently with it. You know, you might end up wasting your time. The game isn't really super clear with how certain things work. I think the main thing they need to improve is the tutorialization and making it clear, like, how systems work and how they don't work and how to properly optimize, that sort of thing. I'm not asking it to hold your hand, because that's obviously not the idea behind this style of game. However, not knowing how, like, you know, to properly utilize electricity, or how to properly, you know, set up your piping system, stuff like that, I feel like the player should be armed with information, and then if they cock it up anyway, then that's their fault, basically. However, excuse me, I have my frog in my throat today, probably had it throughout this video, but I do apologise for that. However, as I was saying, I would still recommend it, even with those niggles in mind. It is still a really fun game, and surprisingly absorbing as well, especially if you're into your survival. So with all that said, how much is it? It is, again, fairly expensive. It is still in early access, as I already said. It's 20% off, making it £15.19. So we're going to end this video with a couple of classic PC games, which were given the enhanced treatment on PC. And they are, of course, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. I don't really think this series needs much of an introduction, to be honest. It is, of course, a beloved classic in the CRPG genre. So if you don't like games where you're in for the long haul, I would back out immediately, as you are definitely in with the long haul with this one. However, the game definitely makes your investment worth it. It has some really strong writing, and also the Enhanced Edition also gotten rid of bugs and introduced some new characters, storylines, and some new modes as well. It's not just the same game, you know, spiffed off a little bit and put on Steam. It is improved and ironed out a little bit as well. And the same goes, of course, for Baldur's Gate 2 as well. Same sort of story, lives up to the reputation of its predecessor, and this is obviously arguably the best version of the game, because, again, not only does it run on modern systems without, you know, having to, like, you know, set it back to, like, 20 years ago. Obviously, I'm joking, but still, it is a lot easier to run than trying to run the original would be. However, they are $3.74, 75% off for the original Enhanced Edition, and for Baldur's Gate 2 it's the same price as well. Or you can get the Baldur's Gate The Complete Saga, which has Baldur's Gate 2, as well as Baldur's Gate Siege of Dragonspear for 70% off, making it £13.48. So if you like your CRPGs, you like your long stories, if you like strong writing and those classic games that, yeah, they have seen a resurgence lately with games like Pillars of Eternity and so on, but, you know, you want to you want to revisit the original one best, you know, the game that you probably spent far too long playing when you were younger, then I would say this is an insanely cheap price to do that on. Excuse me there, my voice kind of broke a little bit as you heard. However, that is me done for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Do forgive me for a little bit of frog in my throat today. Unfortunately, I do seem to be coming down with a cold. I think Paul might have given me his plague, but hopefully not. Anyway, regardless, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.